live.
Oh, good to go?
1 second.
Mhm.
We're good.
Okay. Good morning. Today is Wednesday and March 12, 2025. This is Howard County House delegation. This morning, we had the honor to invite our Congresswoman Sarah Elfett to join us. So the floor is for you, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and to the members of the Howard County delegation. Thank you for having me. I miss you all in Annapolis.
bet you do.
There are some days in DC that I wish I was back with you in the General Assembly. But I'm just so grateful to have worked with all of you for so long before coming to Washington, because I think it's more clear now than ever how important teamwork is, particularly in terms of representing and supporting our constituents during a really anxious and difficult time for them. And so I'm just so grateful to have partners like you. I want to take a moment to introduce two folks that you already, I think, know, but we'll also be working with through my office. Eva Lewis is our district director. I know Eva has sat down with you and your staffs already and some of our district staff. So we have a split staff between Washington and our district office, which is in Howard County. It's in Columbia. And so Eva's in charge of the district staff, where we have caseworkers, we have outreach folks, we have a senior advisor in charge of all things funding. The good and the bad of the funding. And then, of course, we have our staff in Washington, where I'm sitting right now, and Jamie Diatley is our chief of staff. He is on as well, but I really appreciate everybody taking the time to sit with my staff, and we'd like to make that a regular thing so we can continue to talk through particularly casework, and making sure, again, that we are showing up every single day, working together on behalf of our shared constituents. Because as you know all too well, when a constituent calls any of our offices having their worst day, sometimes it's a federal issue, sometimes it's a state issue, sometimes it's a local issue. But we always want to make sure that we are responsive and accommodating and getting anybody who calls our office to the right people if it's a state issue, or you can call our office if somebody reaches out on a federal issue. So that teamwork is really important to us, and I know it's important to you as well. So that's the good stuff, the stuff that I can still control in the midst of these chaotic times, is having a staff that is just absolutely stellar. And as you sat down with them, you know that I was fortunate to be able to bring in people from Senator Cardin's office, from Congressman Sarbanes' office, Congressman Rupersberger's office, Congressman Trone's office. And so just the wealth of experience that the team brings, particularly on the district side, is really, really exciting. I will dig into what's happening in Washington, because it's been chaotic. I was in at the Howard Community College last night for a town hall. We had about 1,200 people between the main room and the overflow room, and lots of folks watching online. And if anybody who watched online is watching today, we apologize for the audio. It was in a gymnasium and lots of people were clapping, so not easy to accommodate good audio in that circumstance, regardless of technological advances. But I think the attendance last night shows just how deeply people care about what's happening in Washington. And I don't need to tell you the obvious, but our district, with 44,000 federal employees, direct federal employees, with 2 or 3 times that in contractual employees who are in some way connected to federal government through funding or otherwise, we are disproportionately impacted by the actions of this administration, the actions of DOGE, more so than any other, more so than most other congressional districts. So when my colleagues on the floor ask me how I'm doing every day, I typically respond with, well, I represent 44,000 federal employees, and they all are very sympathetic. And I think while we are experiencing a lot of the turmoil and anxiety because we are so directly connected to Washington, we also know, and I said this last night, that these unprecedented attacks on our civil servants, while impacting them directly right now, civil servants, we know will impact services and delivery of services for the rest of the country very soon. So if DOGE follows through on cutting, significantly through the Social Security Administration that's located in Maryland, our constituents are directly connected through the their jobs, but we know the services and benefits that people receive will be impacted because of lack of services. And so we can go on down the line from FAA to USDA to EPA and NOAA. NIH is taking huge hits these days, but based on both funding, direct funding, and also funding of research institutions across the country. And so it's a really difficult time. I will try to give you some good news. Not everything is as doomy and gloomy as it might feel. The good news is that we are winning in courts. Most of the cases that we have, we as in the kind of coalition of folks between those impacted are major labor unions who I speak with and work with every single day, our research universities, folks impacted by the federal funding freeze. When those have been challenged in courts, we win far more than we have lost, which is great. That shows that our third branch of government, the judiciary, is doing its job and upholding the Constitution, being in the minority in the House, and we have also a minority of Democrats in the Senate. We are filing legislation. We are filing amicus briefs in support of those court cases in the courts. But I need 3 of my Republican colleagues to join, at least in the House. In the Senate, they need 4. And so doing everything I can, using every tool that I can legislatively, but really supporting those actions in the courts is incredibly important as well. I want to speak about 3 more quick things, Mr. Chair, and then I would love to take any questions. One is the continuing resolution that was voted on last night. First of all, let me just start with, it was an unprecedented continuing resolution. We have never had in the history of this country a year-long continuing resolution, particularly for our defense side. And I serve on the Armed Services Committee and the Natural Resources Committee. So giving a blank check to anybody without congressional oversight or checks and balances, being a former member of Senate Budget and Taxation, just makes me very anxious and angry, because that is not what our Constitution provides for. Of course, Congress has the power of the purse to appropriate. We exercise the necessary checks and balances similar to you in the General Assembly. And this CR on its face flies in the face of that precedent and also doesn't guarantee that what we appropriated will be respected by the executive branch. And again, this is not a partisan issue. This is a separation of powers and a check and balance, and just like find any page in the Constitution, and we're doing some different things now than we previously had. There's also some really serious cuts to a lot of the priorities I know that we share in that continuing resolution. A significant cut to funding housing assistance for low and moderate income folks. About 32,000 people will be impacted by that cut. Significant funding cut for seniors who are food insecure. Significant funding cut for our veterans. We've made tremendous progress over the last few years of addressing, increasing our health coverage for veterans who have been exposed to burn pits. This continuing resolution cuts that by about $15 billion. So significant challenge there. And of course, it also includes major cuts to NIH. Those are kind of just the top lines that are of most concern to me, and I know concerning to the district. Lots of other things in that continuing resolution that I disagree with. And so I voted no last night. But of course, this group knows that the federal government is only funded through Friday. And so that continuing resolution now goes to the Senate. It was very disappointing because while my caucus tried to engage in that process and try to negotiate a compromise, as we have always done, those overtures were rejected. And so this is a continuing resolution that was not compromised, not worked through from both sides. So I don't know what's going to happen on Friday. Your guess is as best as mine. But the House is adjourned. And so it's in the Senate's hands, and I'll probably be in at some point this weekend, but we will keep you posted. And of course, if you have any questions about any of the numbers I just talked about or anything at all, please reach out. The second thing I wanted to discuss quickly is the budget resolution, which is different than the way that I'm used to with working with you all. Our appropriations is different from the budget. Kind of weird, but just so you know, the budget resolution that passed 2 weeks ago, I voted against, still not voted on in the Senate, would call for $2 trillion in cuts, the biggest of which would be $880 billion to what could only be Medicaid, which of course this group knows is so important to many Marylanders, many residents in the 3rd Congressional District, to children, to new mothers, to low-income folks, to seniors. So it would be a devastating cut to our communities. It also calls for a $4 trillion increase in our debt ceiling. And so it's hard for me to relegate calls for government efficiency and lowering our spending and attacks on our civil service in the name of lowering our budget, lowering how much money the federal government spends, when we're increasing our debt ceiling by $4 trillion. That's again coming from budget and taxation in the Senate. That's not, in my mind, fiscally responsible. And so that budget resolution will be the next about 6 months of work in the Congress. And so I'm going to be advocating, talking about Medicaid. I have a series called Medicaid Moment that I'm trying to do once a week, just to share a new fact about Medicaid that folks might not know. If anybody has any ideas for me to share, I'm happy to do that. So that's of major concern as well. I do have a bit of good news in that yesterday I filed my first bill, and it is my first bill, but it's also the first bipartisan response to DOGE in the Congress. I've worked very hard. I spend a lot of my day when we're on the floor, physically across the aisle, talking to my Republican colleagues, because we can't do anything without convincing at least 3 of our Republican colleagues to join us. And so this bill, it's very simple. It targets, it's a solution for our probationary federal employees who were summarily fired, most of them on Valentine's Day, as you recall. The reason that they were singled out is because they have fewer protections than if they weren't probationary. But you'll hear me, I'm a broken record about this. I have 4 news interviews today talking about it. Just because someone has the title of probationary does not mean that they did anything wrong or they are in any kind of violation of anything. It means that they are either new to federal service in a permanent position, or they have been serving in federal government for decades or years and were so great at it that they got a promotion and they started the probationary clock over again. I have a constituent who was 1 day away from ending his probationary status when he was fired. These folks were not given 2 weeks notice. They were not given a severance. They were given health insurance through the end of the month, but that was it. So yesterday we hosted a press conference with a number of these probationary employees. Our bill is very simple because a number of these probationary employees have been reinstated because of the courts. A number of them have been reinstated because Elon Musk has admitted that mistakes were made in moving so quickly, mistakes in firing folks who are responsible for the security of our nuclear arsenal, folks who are fighting the spread of Ebola across the world, folks who are in charge of researching and mitigating avian flu in our farmers. So he has admitted mistakes were made, and in our bill calls for, if those probationary employees are reinstated for any reason, that we will respect the time that they've already given to the federal service, and they will not have to start their clock over again. Now, I know this is a small measure, but it's something that I believe that I can get past because it affects everyone's districts. I've already gotten 3 Republican co-sponsors, and I'm working every day to get more. So we have the momentum to actually get this passed, get this into law, and protect, yes, a segment of our federal workforce, but something I'm very focused on getting done in this Congress. And so I'm going to end on that high note, Mr. Chair, because it is. I didn't realize it was the first bipartisan response to DOGE until the newspapers called it out yesterday. And I want to share that we have 18 months until the next election. And so you're going to see me try to get things done. And again, a lot of that has to do with convincing 3 of my Republican colleagues to join us, because again, the impacts of DOGE and the impacts of the White House disproportionately impact our district. And so I find it to be my obligation to try my damnedest to protect our district. And that's what I'm focused on. And I probably went over time, and I will stop talking, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Well, we really appreciate your effort. I think your first bill focused on something really meaningful. We heard a lot of stories like this, like our constituents get fired, even they're promoted. So
Right.
which totally doesn't make any sense at all. And I really appreciate your effort. I think your Facebook page really keep us informed. So I always forward your post to myself. I think that's really help our constituents informed. And I think it's the time. We know there's so many uncertainty. I really appreciate your calamity in the Congress to help fight for a better country, right? So we're lacking that. And same time, I realize there are a lot of people who are shouting of firing their neighbors, their friends. I just unfriended a lot of Facebook friends. So recently, I just couldn't tolerate that. So I really appreciate your effort.
Yeah.
So Delegate Watson. You need to unmute. I think something wrong. Can I go to the next one? Anybody else have questions? Okay, Delegate Hill.
So Congresswoman, first, thank you very much for the work and for taking the time to be with us. Unfortunately, we're right before crossover, so I'm in and out trying to get to these committees and subcommittees. But on your bill, great work. Hope you can actually get it passed. Does it also give them the back pay for the missing days?
It is silent on that. I was trying to keep it as simple as possible to get that Republican support. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't. It would just, there's no protection in federal law right now for us to respect the time they've given. And so that's what I wanted to provide for.
Got it. And then the last question I have is my understanding, and I just want you to clarify, to confirm or deny that the CR, even should it pass, it will give the 4547 and his deputy president the ability to do more swapping, move funding around from department to department. So it gives them some legal coverage for some of the stuff that they've been doing illegally. Is that accurate?
I don't want to assume their motivation, but it does provide, in my view, an unprecedented level of blank checkness. It's early in the morning, so I would put it that way. But that's what's really concerning to me as a former appropriator, and I know Delegate Watson as well. That's not what the Congress is here with the power of the purse to check and balance, and it's unprecedented. I'm as equally concerned about the norms that we are breaking as well as the laws that are being broken right now, because having everybody living in a year-long CR forever and ever will be hugely detrimental to many of us, our small businesses, hugely detrimental to our armed services. If I can just say that right now, I'm in a lot of SCIFs, I'm in a lot of security briefings, not the way to protect our nation and serve our military members with a constant CR. So it's unprecedented.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Delegate Watson, yeah.
Okay, good. Very quickly, because I know other people have questions, but given that the House passed this, it's probably likely the Senate's going to pass it. Is that correct?
Well, the Senate needs to get to 60 votes. And so I've learned a long time ago not to speculate.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Okay. And I want to just compliment you on your performance last night. It does feel like the grassroots are coming up more so than I've ever seen. And I just want you to know that we have your back. We know how hard it must be for you in there, and we're watching you. We're using your information in our own newsletters. We're proud of you. And I know it's hard, but we got your back.
I appreciate that a lot. These are unprecedented times for everybody. And it's an unprecedented time to be new in Congress. I still get lost in the tunnels and we're trying to do all this, but that's a good, I forgot to mention, we have a resource guide that many of you have. We update that regularly as new information, new challenges come about. Please share that with your constituents. Anything new, anytime we add something substantively new, I'm going to ask Eva to reshare that with our partners and highlight that new section. I also forgot to mention on the federal funding freeze piece, of course, I mentioned success in courts. A number of judges have upheld the challenge to that federal funding freeze, calling for the federal government to release those funds. They are not always listening. And so we have had success in our office on an individual basis, grant by grant. If something is frozen or you're locked out of a portal, our nonprofit partners, local government partners, please reach out to our office. I can't promise you we can fix it, but we will do our damnedest.
Okay, Delegate Feldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Congresswoman. I want to echo my colleagues' comments. I know last night was a tremendous showing, but it really is just the most recent in what has been a steady chain of communication and information sharing, which you have clearly made a priority since you took office. So thank you. We've had some conversations already about sort of what else we might be able to do at the state level to help folks who are impacted, whether they're federal employees, contractors, or just, small business owners or employees of small businesses who are impacted by all of this. And, I think we stand ready to do whatever we can and welcome your input on that. I did want to ask, you shared the good news about our judicial system, providing some relief and some stability and sanity here. But I guess my question is, looking longer term, right? We've been hit with this barrage of executive actions, and that's where I think we've been able to get some judicial relief because of the overreach in terms of overriding things that have already been, constitutionally and congressionally appropriated. How does the game plan shift, and how can we support you as we look longer term when this administration will have time to be doing things with congressional support and, with the majority party in each chamber? What does that longer term landscape look like, and how can we be helpful to you and your colleagues and help prepare for that?
Well, I think taking your first point first, I think is so important that we are there for our neighbors on their hardest days. And so Howard County Executive Calvin Ball has set up a number of job fairs. Every defense contractor that comes in and asks me for a meeting, I'm asking if they're hiring, because we have so many folks who need jobs. So we're constantly trying to figure out opportunities for folks. Delegate Watson, you know this all too well, serving on appropriations, but we have a challenge with our state government, and Governor Moore has committed to fast tracking folks into state service when we have vacancies, but it can take DBM 3 months to onboard some folks. And so I think that's an opportunity for the General Assembly to, give a friendly nudge to fast track qualified folks into state service. To your second question.
Good idea.
Your second question is really important. Just the news last night about the the Federal Department of Education, which cannot be eliminated by executive order, but they're going to make it really painful by eliminating it by 1,000 cuts with employee firings. I don't know if they would have the votes to pass that if they brought it to Congress. They wouldn't have had the votes, I don't think, to disassemble USAID the way they have, again, which is, in my view, illegal because it was created by Congress, can only be uncreated by Congress. I think what I've been asking folks to do, and this is anybody watching from home, is really important here. I'm prohibited from saying certain things because of ethics rules in the House, but I will illustrate what happened the last time that Republicans tried to cut Medicaid drastically back in 2017. People, the grassroots that was mentioned, people got really upset and started showing up and participating, as I saw last night in Howard County. People started coming to, folks' district offices and showing up at the airport when my colleagues landed into Washington or at home, and expressing, utilizing the tool we have to freely assemble and peacefully respond to things. That needs to happen across this country in districts that don't look like ours, and for my colleagues who don't vote like me. We've received, it has to be at least 10,000 calls in the last 2 months, which is great. I'm grateful that people are reaching out to us, but I'm going to ask folks to have the harder conversations than calling my office, because I'm with them most of the time. The harder conversations are, you know, even my family, these are hard conversations. When we have family members or friends who, again, don't live in our district and are represented by folks who don't vote like me, those are the conversations we need to have and ask them to engage in the process as well. That's our, you know, in the short term before an election, that's one way we can build a bigger coalition and hopefully convince some of my colleagues to see the light. I think I stayed in my ethics lane on that one.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We really appreciated meeting you this morning,
Yeah.
and we appreciate your fight in the Congress for the district. And
Of course.
thank you very much.
Thank
And
you. And you all have my cell phone, so please reach out if I can ever be of help. And you have Eva's phone and Jamie, and just thank you for being tremendous partners.
Sure. Thank you.